The first time I was on board this $12 million Gulfstream jet, the owner, my client, wrote down something on an envelope about the foundation of his real estate success that he said anyone could do on any scale. Now, the jet in these photos is really it, not some stock picture. But George's jet also had a $4 million sculptor collection on board, so I was inclined to take his advice seriously. What George told me that day applies to anyone interested in real estate investing, whether you're experienced or just starting. He would become a friend and mentor for the next 30 years. More about George in just a minute. This is Scott Tonges. I'm the creator of the Cash Cow Realty Academy, where you'll learn how to start with nothing, earn seed capital, buy your first income-producing property, then use that one property to parlay into a high cash flow portfolio, and do so with every income property type, residential, apartments, and commercial, all working part-time. Now, I know that sounds like a tall order, but let me show you why you may want to think about this and how it can be done working only part-time. Now, over his 50-year career, George bought and sold over $2 billion worth of real estate, an overwhelming thought to any investor. But knowledge of what he does translates directly into being profitable, even to someone thinking of buying a first investment property. When most people think about getting into real estate, they look at houses. They consider either of two ideas. They buy a nice home and then rent it out, looking for inflation to make them money over time. They hope to resell it for a profit down the road, knowing leverage is one of the big advantages of real estate. So as an example, they'll buy a $200,000 house, put 20% down or $40,000. They'll get an 80% bank for the balance, then they'll rent it out. And they hope that sometime down the road, perhaps a few years, they'll resell it, say for $225,000. And because of leverage and inflation, that $25,000 is their return on their $40,000 down payment. The problem is there are unknowns, there are fixes, there's move-outs that lower the return, and over time, and we don't know how long that is, that can eat up the return on investment on an average annual basis. And eventually they may just leave the business altogether. Alternatively, a lot of people see the rehabbers on TV and think it looks pretty easy. The profit from one flip looks as if it could replace a year's worth of income for many people. Now that's fine, but they go about it wrong because they don't bother to find out the secret these rehabbers don't reveal. And I'll be telling you about that shortly. So they go to a bank, they borrow money, they buy the fixer house, they endure the challenges, the pitfalls of rehab, and maybe decide real estate's not for them. Did you see the movie with Tom Hanks, The Money Pit? I encourage you to go rent it. Most would-be investors don't learn they can make money with real estate in other ways, like how they can make money on a house without owning it, and that control can be more profitable than buying a house, and there's no risk or midnight calls about backed-up toilets. Unfortunately, they never even consider buying a small office building, an apartment, or a strip shopping center as they think it's too complicated or mysterious or expensive. They never learn the benefit of real income properties and how capitalization can turn a $100 a month income into $13,333 in value. This rent it out or fix it up with houses when better ideas exist, well, all this thinking is wrong. With some new knowledge and a few simple steps, you can earn seed capital without using your cash or taking risk by assigning deals to end buyers for a profit. You can take that seed capital and invest it in your first income property. You can then upgrade this property and refinance it so that you refund all of your investment, plus pull out some of your new equity that you've created. You can repeat the process with this new money and then parlay into more properties for a lifetime of cash flow. What I'll be showing you is a plan focused on small income properties that will allow you to create permanent cash flow without more effort, increase your net worth, generate a pile of cash, have pride of ownership in properties, and the tax advantages that go with them. But more important, there's an end game with no more continued effort. It really is possible to have an end goal of permanent cash flow without more work or deal making, And that lets you get off the gerbil wheel of trading time for dollars, which is all most people ever learn. You can learn a set of financial skills that very few people possess that can make you financially independent. That is, finally give you financial peace. You can also invest at a distance. The entire U.S. is your potential market, so it doesn't matter where you live. In fact, all my investing has been done from 200 to 800 miles away from my small 9,000 population resort town where I live. I don't even go look at seed capital properties, so distance is irrelevant, and local help can be used for deals that you might later control. In this video, I'm going to show you a whole new way to look at how to profit from real estate. More important, I'll show you how to use knowledge versus cash to make money from thin air by controlling real estate to start, not by owning it. This creates your seed capital. Next, I'll show you how to use your seed capital to buy your first property wisely. Then I'll show you how to use that one property as the launch pad to buy more, all while keeping the cash flow from this first deal. Permanent, ongoing cash flow without doing more deals. It's what I call the cash cow plan. Let me tell you how I came to this understanding of these ideas, applied them successfully, and how some successful immigrant real estate investors I came to know let me in on a secret that most of us never learned. A little background first, if I may. My first job after college was as an engineer with NASA. I was lucky enough to get on board with Jet Propulsion's Lab Goldstone tracking station right at the time of the first Apollo 11 first man on the moon mission. Before long, I felt that engineering wasn't my calling, so I jumped ship from a safe, good engineering salary to become a novice commercial real estate broker dealing with apartments. Within 6 weeks of coming on board of the Houston office, I received my first brokerage check, which was a decent 5-figure commission. Now, it had nothing to do with any skill I had none, but everything to do with my mentor who guided me through my first deals. During the next 18 years, I'd worked for the 2 largest commercial real estate firms in the U.S. There were some interim stops along the way, too, including an associate and I having the crazy idea to build a 5-building office condominium project. I was soon sitting on an $800,000 potential profit, ready to sell our 5 buildings for about $1 million each. Here it is today. But that came crashing down when oil prices dropped by 70% and Houston was devastated. I was sitting on a $3.2 million loan, had 5 vacant buildings, and no income. Brokerage had disappeared completely. To earn money and dig out from this mess, I formed a commercial property management company, just me and my wife to start. 5 years later, we had 100 employees and managed over 1,846 apartment units and about 500,000 square feet of commercial space in 5 cities, from Houston to San Francisco. Over the coming decades, I learned about and brokered every kind of income property: office buildings, shopping centers, warehouses, and even hotels and motels. I think I have about a 5-year attention span that I've got to learn something new. I've done everything from small deals to being involved in selling a 1,430-unit apartment portfolio. Actually, I sold it twice. A single 845-unit apartment building, and I was involved in a $225 million shopping center trophy deal. My first book, Cash Cows, is about, in part, what I learned during all those years. During my hotel motel brokerage days, I came to learn a lot from immigrants who know that the lodging business can employ their entire family. In time, a hotel developer friend of mine introduced me to a relative who had $1 million to invest and wanted to buy a hotel. As I often did with investor clients after I got to know them, I asked him how he came to have $1 million to spend. He told me a very familiar story that would become the foundation of what I'll be sharing with you. He came to this country to take a job with relatives in New York. That didn't last long, and with little more than one-way airfare, he took a job with another relative as the night manager at a gas station convenience store near San Francisco. Now think about that, a night manager at a convenience store. Not a path to riches, right? He learned the business and later became manager over several stores this relative owned. He saved his money and in time bought his first gas station, convenience store. He then used that one store to finance others, and eventually he had 7 stores. He then sold off 4 of them, keeping the 3 others for cash flow, and that's where he got the $1 million. In short, he learned a set of skills. He earned seed capital, then he invested in that one store, then he parlayed that one property into several, and later this became a pile of cash plus ongoing cash flow. One store became 7 stores. So remember that term parlay. Now, this took nearly 15 years to accomplish, but I'm going to show you how you can do something similar with real estate as an investment, not a job, in about 1/3 the time, and you'll never have to stand behind the counter of a convenience store or give up your current job. About 10 years ago, I came across a book by a residential real estate guru who, to date, has bought and sold more than 2,000 homes since 1982. His ideas intrigued me, so I decided to see if I could apply one of the activities he suggested. While continuing my commercial brokerage activities, I soon found myself one day out in a rural area, petting the horses and looking at a vacant but very nice custom home. Stumbling through my first deal, in about 45 days, I made $8,500 from that transaction and never risked anything but the cost of a newspaper ad and putting some pictures on a crude website. I had to admit this was a lot easier than brokering buildings or running around with fickle buyers. Now, if you remember what most people do with homes, either rehabs or buy and rent them out and sell them later, let me show you some better, safer, and far less expensive ways to make money with homes. Then, I'll show you how these ideas apply directly to commercial income properties and how you can turn a $100 a month income increase into $13,333 in value using capitalization with commercial properties in a way you just can't do with homes. Now, just to expand a little more on making money with homes. First, you can get an option to buy a property just like a Hollywood producer options a book or a screenplay. In fact, you can get an option to buy in one or more ways from someone. You can get an option to lease option the property. You can get an option to sell or finance a property purchase, or you can get an option to get a discounted cash sale. Any individual one or all 3. This is control without ownership. With such an arrangement with an owner, you can do either of 2 things. First, you can assign your rights for a fee or an upcharge paid by the end user. Or you could stay sandwiched in between if there's a good spread between the price or the rent or both. And I'll explain that in a little bit more in more detail in just a moment. So, a lease option and an assignment. Let's look at that first. You could arrange to lease the property with an option to buy it from the owner for a set price. Let's say you pay the seller a $1,000 option fee. There's no specific amount. And your option price is $200,000. With an assignment, you can then sell that right to a tenant buyer. So let's assume his option fee to you is $6,000 and his option price with you is $205,000. So you keep the $5,000 for the assignment fee, all the rest goes to the owner of the home, and you're out of the deal completely and have made $5,000. Alternatively, if there's a large spread, and I'll give you this example, you can stay sandwiched in between the owner and the end buyer. As an example, you could contract to lease option the property, as I noted before, and your deal with the owner might look like this. You have the right to buy the property at $200,000. You'll pay a $1,000 option fee for that right, and eventually you'll owe the owner $199,000. And let's say you set up a 3-year lease for $1,250 a month. Then you want to take that deal to a tenant buyer. You then lease the property to the tenant buyer and give him an option price of $225,000, charge him a $5,000 option fee, and charge him $1,450 a month and give him a 2-year lease. So you've made $4,000 up front, plus when the tenant buyer goes to purchase the home, he'll owe you another $21,000, which is the difference in what he owes you and you whatever your obligation is to the seller. So you've made a profit of $25,000 total on this one deal, and you get the differential and the $200 a month cash flow for whatever period of time until the tenant buyer purchases the home. You can do this very same thing with a seller financed property. Let's say on the left side there you'll see an assignment. So you can profit from a down payment differential in that case. So let's say you have an arrangement of $10,000 down with the owner, but then you sell the rights to the tenant or to the buyer, a third-party buyer, for $20,000, and that's an assignment. So you keep the $10,000 differential. Alternatively, you could create a good down payment and a price spread for even more profit. I call that a sandwich deal. So your deal with a seller, as an example, would be $10,000 down on a $200,000 price. Then you resell that house or have that buyer already lined up for $230,000 with $17,000 down. So you get $7,000 up front, and when that buyer goes to purchase the home, another $23,000 as an end profit. So you make $30,000. Now, I did enough of these lease option deals alone, in which I was sandwiched in between each of them, that I wrote my first book, How to Turn one $2,500 investment into $500,000 in 3 to 5 years leasing homes. And all the same principles apply to a seller-financed house. But with a lease option, you're never obligated to anything more than a 1-year lease, as you'll learn in that book. Let me tell you a little about TV rehabbers. This is where you're going from a wholesale deal to ultimately what will be a retail deal, and some of the secrets they don't tell you. Let's assume that a home which has a target value, or what they call an after repair value, of $200,000. That's after it's fixed up. And let's assume that the estimated fix-up cost to get this house in order is about $30,000. You want to buy that home for about 60% of the after repaired value, less the fix-up cost. So a $200,000 in price times 60%, that's $120,000 less the $30,000 fix-up cost. So your purchase price needs to be near $90,000. Now that's something most people never tell you about the house rehabbers as to what kind of discounts they're getting on these, because if you get much less of a discount than that, you run the risk of cost overruns and not making any profit. So what the TV rehabber would do is buy that house for $90,000. He would put up the fixes for about $30,000, and if you've watched those shows, you know that can overrun sometimes. So he's got a $120,000 cost in it. But he'll sell the property for about $200,000, less approximately 7% in closing costs, realtor fees, that sort of thing, and he'll net about $186,000. So $186,000 less $120,000 cost, that's a $66,000 for profit, surprises, and loan cost. But what you see is the easy part. You just see the fix-up. What you don't know is that lots of offers are made to buy just one house. That becomes a business in itself, just making offers and finding deals. And the profit is made when they buy. In other words, they buy that house right. They know what the end value will be. The fix-up that you see on TV is just mechanics, and with little variation in the final fix-up cost, they're pretty much assured of what that end price is going to be, and they can't really do much about what that will be because the market controls it. Now, if you don't want to undertake a rehab, you can wholesale a home with a big upside profit potential. You contract to buy this fixer or undervalued property, then you sell this opportunity to a rehabber for a fee. So you sell the $90,000 deal for $5,000 as an example, or the rehabber pays you $95,000 for the deal. There's no risk on your part, and it's one way to earn seed capital. Now, all these ideas can apply to commercial property, but with a lot more profit potential, and this is unknown to most investors. A few years back, after the 2009 implosion of the economy, I was working with two separate friends who were hovering around a vacant fourplex that was on the market for $150,000. Now, a potential $4,500 commission looked pretty good at the time, given what the market had been through. But I got frustrated with their wishy-washy attitude, so I thought, well, forget them. I'll make money with this place on my own and prove to myself that it's a good deal, and I won't use a dime of my own money or go to a bank. So I wrote up a contract for $105,000. Now, this was a short sale, meaning selling for less than the defaulted loan balance. So the seller signed the deal as written, as they couldn't receive anything out of it. Having control of the property by virtue of my contract with the seller, I then offered the property to the market, and I just put it on Craigslist. I did disclose that it was subject to a short sale and the lender's approval, and I was the contracted purchaser. I soon found a cash buyer, and I went under contract with him at $148,000. The short sale lender came back at $110,000, which I accepted. That meant I'd make $38,000 for zero investment, not even earnest money. Now, my buyer will make good money too at this place because it needed less than $20,000 worth of fixes by my very general estimate, with appliances and landscaping after it's leased up. And at that time, he'll have a fourplex worth about $250,000 in good cash flow. So he'll invest the $148,000 that he paid me, plus $20,000 fix-up, and I have a new equity, and he'll have a new equity of about $82,000 plus the property cash flow. I had wholesaled the commercial property. The key was that I knew how to determine the fixed-up value. So how did I know what the target value of that property might be? Unlike houses, commercial properties don't sell based on comps per se. They sell on what they call a capitalization rate. So let me show you my math, because I could do this, and you'll learn to as well to do this on the back of a napkin if you wish. I knew that the rents in the area would be about $700 a month for units like this. There were 4 units, so I multiply that by 12 months. So that shows, based on area rents, that this property fully leased could generate about $33,600 a year. Now, no one believes everything will stay occupied forever, so they discount that a little bit, and let's say by 10%. So we call it effective gross income of $30,240 on average. Less the expenses, again, I learned this from other deals, what they were really cost to operate, of about $9,000. So that left what they call net operating income, or NOI, of $24,240 a year. I then capitalized that based on comps, and I'll explain capitalization in a moment, at 8.5. So I basically divide the 24,240 by 0.085, and that gives me $249,882 as a target value for that property. With $15,000 to $20,000 for fix-up, I offered the property for $150,000. The buyer gets a $158,000 purchase plus $20,000 in fixes, and when that's done, he has a $249,000 property, or he'll have a new equity in that case of $79,000. And if he paid all cash, didn't get a loan, that's a 14.5% return on his investment. That's a pretty good return on his investment. And if he leveraged it, that is, got a loan on it eventually, he could return virtually all of his money. And I'll show you that in just a moment. Now, I sold this place for $38,000 profit, and what I did was really assign my contract to this buyer. Now, there were a few little points in there, but I had no risk and no investment. But for all the details, I've attached a PDF file so you can see the details on how I exactly put this deal together. The key to all income properties is the power of and understanding of capitalization. It's the same thing I learned aboard George's jet. George wrote down something like this: buy for $15 per square foot, upgrade for $5 a square foot, lease up and sell for $30 a square foot. Well, that's a $15 per square foot profit. on a $500,000 square foot distribution warehouse, which is George's preferred deal type, that's a $5 million profit. That's how you get into the private jet league. But as George said, you can do this on any scale. A 10,000 square foot warehouse, as an example, that you buy for $150,000 could be fixed up for $50,000. Then you could sell it for $300,000 and yield a $100,000 profit. As one of my hotel developer friends says about his own profession, how hard can it be? What this fourplex deal revealed to me was this. Without even thinking about it, I'd taken the collective experience of my own 39 years, the hundreds of years of collective experience of my successful commercial clients, what I'd learned about house investing, and I made money from thin air with a small commercial property. What's more, seeing what the motel immigrants and gas station convenience store guy did, and many others, I assembled all the steps that would allow anyone the formula to build their own high cash flow portfolio of small income properties, a simple 3-step formula that anyone can learn. In fact, there are only a few basics you need to know. It's not rocket science, as you're about to find out. After all this dealing with commercial properties and clients for 39 years, homes part-time for over 10 years, it all finally dawned on me that everything came down to a few simple formulas and patterns. In fact, all income properties follow the same basic pattern, and you can learn it and profit from it, and I'm going to show it to you in just a moment. Ordinary people do this in one part or another, but very few have had the broad range of experience I've been lucky enough to have that would allow you to put a game plan together as I've now done for you. Now, before your eyes glaze over and you think this might be too complicated for you, let me share with you what marketing wizard Dan Kennedy says about why most people fail at business and in life. By the way, if you have any kind of business or know anybody that does, you would do them a great favor to take them to dankennedy.com and learn everything that Planet Dan has to offer. But here's some wisdom that Dan Kennedy shared recently on a video I watched, why most people fail at business and life. Number one, most everyone is looking for simple solutions to complex challenges. If you don't learn anything else from these videos, I encourage you to write down that one sentence because it is very, very powerful. And as I look back over an entire career, I realize how incredibly right and important it is. If you want to become a real estate investor, nobody's going to be able to give you a 30-minute lesson and teach you how it's done. You don't make that kind of money with a limited amount of knowledge. And I think that's far too often what happens with most people. They give up too quickly before they really master something or become good at it. They're not willing to put in the time and the effort to really understand how things work and how to get ahead with it. They're looking for the simple answer to a solution that's actually more complex than they're willing to investigate. The other thing he talks about gets into marketing, about random acts versus an organized approach, and goodness knows I've been guilty of that myself. Random acts of advertising or marketing as opposed to a systematic, organized approach. The other is self-imposed limitations. Now, I don't know where you live, but I do know that if your town isn't the one to go to, it seems like quite a stretch to go out of town, and you may not even be comfortable working in your own town, but going out of town may seem even more daunting. I'll tell you a story very briefly about there's a brownie maker in Phoenix, actually a bakery, but they specialize in very high-end brownies, and they eventually realized that they could leave their own hometown via the internet and start shipping these, which they now do all over the nation and, for all I know, all over the world. But all they did was adjust their thinking to realize they had a very unique and attractive product. They priced it high, but there were plenty of buyers because their product is good. And now they're shipping all over the United States from their little bakery in Phoenix. The other is talk versus action. And again, most people talk about things, but they don't really take the first step to get them going. And certainly poor choices of influence. If you're listening to your relative or somebody that just tells you this can or can't be done and they have all the answers though they've never accomplished anything, you'll probably be sucked into their way of thinking and it won't do you any good. Again, please remember, Don't be looking for simple solutions to complex challenges, because it's certainly the sure way to failure. So that's the end of my personal lecture. But in order to simplify the years of experience that I've had and to imitate the kind of success that my immigrant friend had with the convenience store using real estate, I've created the Cash Cow Plan. Now this plan, simplified in this chart, really shows that getting seed capital, earning it, buying properties, and parlaying it into a portfolio are the basic steps of doing it. And on the left, you note that it's about getting money for nothing to earn your seed capital, financing tricks, unlocking the presentation so you understand how to read the information about income properties, how to investigate properties properly, and how to create profitable management when you become an owner. And on the right, I mentioned you can do it with anything: apartments, office buildings, shopping centers, warehouses, and single-family homes to get started. Now, one great thing that deals like this fourplex have going for them, in fact, all true income properties have going for them, is the power of capitalization. Now, tomorrow, in the next video you'll receive, I'll go into detail about how to take these concepts to a whole new level of profit. So join me then.